Right. So I know that we are a little behind, so I think I might go ahead and get us started. I want to do a quick check. Veronica and Litany, I see you are both here. I know that there is a list of folks who had kind of signed up for this room. Do you all think we are ready to go, or should we pause and wait for anyone else to head over?
I think that we can go ahead. There are 2 different access rooms, so even if they might have got popped into the other one.
Okay. All right. Well, like I said, we are a little behind time, so I'm going to go ahead and dive in. So good morning. Welcome, everybody. My name is Jessica Smith. I am with the Wichita State Community Engagement Institute. I specifically work in our Center for Public Health Initiatives. So this work is near and dear to my heart. The work you all are doing is something that I am deeply passionate about. And I think I heard the word systems at least 10 times already this morning, and that is the work that I really lean into is systems level work in the state of Kansas. So it just made me even more excited to be able to be here and have this conversation. So thank you all for being engaged in systems work to impact the health and physical activity access of those in the community you care about. So really what we're doing here today is kind of a big brainstorming process. I'll tell you a little bit more about what that looks like. We're essentially in breakouts until 11:40 with that 10-minute scheduled break that's going to happen at 10:50. So I will be watching time and make sure that I get you places on time. So we are asking you today to participate in using an online tool. We also have the microphones in the chat available. I'll tell you more about that online tool in a moment. But before we really dive in, I do just want to make a quick note. I know that it was presented and on the agenda, it had a couple of specific focus areas. We shifted that just a little bit, still the same general sense, but we will be talking about strengths, opportunities, specifically around that cross-sector opportunity area, challenges, and then we're going to end with priorities. So this information will be saved and shared back and available to the work group so they can make some really informed decisions about next steps and implementation projects. So this is helping really springboard you all further into that, okay, what are we really going to do and what is it going to look like conversation. So like I said, the titles are a little different, but it's getting you set up for that implementation space. So I just wanted to make that note before anybody got confused. As we are discussing these different areas today, the invitation to you all is to show up not only representing yourself, your own personal interests and passions. We know most of you are affiliated with an organization, but you're also here representing a sector. So you've got a few different hats we're asking you to wear today and think about not just where is my organization at? What do we think? But I'm representing the media sector. What does the media sector have to offer, or what's the lens from that sector? So consider that as we move through the prompts today about, okay, which hat am I wearing? Does my response look different if I put on this other hat over here? So that's the invitation. As I mentioned, it's gonna feel especially fast in this first, these next 20-ish minutes. So I'm going to use a timer on my phone. So if you see me looking down, that's just because I'm trying to hold to time and move us through so we actually get to everything. And then at the end of all of the breakouts, so at 11:40, we'll be asking for a volunteer to share out and represent kind of the key takeaways from this group. So if you are somebody who is willing to be a volunteer, be thinking about that. You don't have to answer now, but I'll ask again at the very end. But I wanted to prepare you if you need mental space to think about, okay, I can do this. I can share to the whole group. But I will be asking for one of you in this space to be the person to share out. All right. That was fast. Any questions before I get us started? All right. So we are going to be using a platform called Jamboard. First, we want to make sure that you have your Zoom chat open. So because I am going to drop a link in the chat, which I did just now. If you can click on that link, it will take you to, and I see an anonymous walrus is here. So somebody already was able to join. So thank you. But we want to make sure everybody gets in this Jamboard, and this is how we will be collecting the ideas. And as I mentioned, this will save and we'll be able to share everything that we collect today back with the group. So All right. The only feature that you all are going to need to use today is the sticky note and maybe to navigate pages, because I'm not sure if I click, did you see that change from welcome to strengths? No, okay, so you'll have to use the page navigation at the top as well. But first, the sticky notes. If you go and look on the left-hand side, you see that it looks like there's the big mouse pointer, an image thing, but if you click in the middle with the couple of lines, it says sticky note and it'll pop up. It has color choices at the top, and there is where you'll be able to type in your information and share that to the Jamboard. You don't have to worry about moving stuff around. I will work to move that around while we are all here. So the first thing I want to do is just practice. And with that, can you just share? You all might know each other, but I don't know you. So will you write your name, your organization, and the sector you're representing all on one sticky note, and then hit save. And you can, if you want to get jazzy and change your color, feel free to do that as well. But I just want to make sure it's working and everybody can access that. So name, comma, organization, comma, sector you're representing. Okay, so I see Robin and Blake. Thank you. Robin, Blake, do you want to go in and add your organization and sector you're representing? You should just be able to double click and edit your sticky note. Welcome, Seth and Whitney. And if you are unable to access Jamboard for any reason and just would like to use the chat in Zoom, I can probably help support 1 or 2 people and get those ideas over to this Jamboard so that we have them all collected. But I probably am not quick enough to do more than 1 or 2 than fielding 1 or 2 extras. Okay, I see a couple. Robin, you're here twice. That's great. Blake, Kyle, Seth, Whitney twice. Amanda.
I can only see myself once because I thought I deleted it. I don't know. I
Oh,
don't know. It didn't show
well,
up
maybe
on
I
my
have a
phone.
lag.
It's only showing up once. That's on me, so I delete it if I can.
No worries.
Yeah, I'm having the same thing, Robin.
There's Veronica. I don't think it will hurt us to have it twice because we'll know to filter through the responses if there are any duplicates.
Did mine even show up?
Carla.
It's Carla. Yeah.
Carla, I'm not seeing you here. Are you on the welcome? Oh, Carla, I see you on the strengths page. So at the very top, you'll see like 1 out of 7, 2 out of 7. You may need to use that arrow to navigate back to the welcome page. Ah, Martin, I see you on the strengths page as well. Okay, and Melissa, I see you in the chat. Feel free to use the chat and I will help support getting your information where it needs to be. Okay. So all right, well, I think you all have got it, and some of the kinks will work out along the way. So let's dive in, because I know that we want to hear all of your thoughts. So if you go to the right one, you'll see the strengths page. So again, it's at the top with the 1 out of 7. If you just click 1, the new header should say strengths and it will be blank. So we are here in this group and specifically focusing on access to physical activity. So the question, and don't type anything yet, but when you think about access to physical activity, what strengths can you leverage to move this work forward? So specifically anchoring and access to physical activity, what strengths can you leverage to move this work forward? I'm going to set a timer and give you 60 seconds to just process, take notes at your desk, because the invitation next will be to share just your top 2 to 3 ideas. So if you can already think of 7, I'm asking you to think of what are those top 2 to 3 ideas that you want to share related to this. So I will set a timer now and let you know when we're ready to put those on the board. Okay, so hopefully you came up with a good list and were able to identify those top 2 or 3. So the ask now is to share those on the Jamboard, 1 idea per sticky note. So you should be sharing 2 or 3 separate sticky notes. And again, they could be different colors or the same color, but we're just looking for 1 idea per sticky note. Okay, so again, when you think about access to physical activity, what strengths can you leverage to move this work forward? I'm seeing partnership with BV Ed Foundation, sharing information on physical activity options available in the community for your stakeholders, mentors and resources of Children's Mercy, access to a variety of community members. Oh, that's interesting. Is somebody willing to say more about what do you mean access to a variety of community members? Oh, Carla, I see you working on the unmute.
My little windows here. I just, the size of the Blue Valley School District is rather large, and there are so many parents that are involved and willing to help, and they're involved in a variety of sectors in the community.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, absolutely. I think that access to those stakeholders and community members who are also tied into different factions of the community,
Yes.
that makes a lot of sense to me.
And then my post was the BV Ed Foundation. So that's the Blue Valley Education Foundation, and they have an even broader reach with community members.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
I'm seeing connections with philanthropy-minded physical activity coaches and instructors. Absolutely can support that access connection. Training on access and benefits targeted to childcare providers. Melissa put in development, expansion of adaptive and inclusive sports and recreation throughout the city. I do want a quick pause. Melissa, can you see the Zoom screen okay? I could share my Jamboard, but I know everybody else is looking at it on their own and seeing this live. So if it would be helpful for you, I'm happy to do a share screen. I just had not, because I like still seeing everybody's faces.
Yeah, it's up to you. As long as you're reading them, that's fine. I'm keeping up with you.
Okay. Fundraising, relationship building with funding agencies. Just recognizing that there are many organizations in Kansas City dedicated to physical activity. Okay, so as we think about the strengths that you have to leverage, making progress on access to physical activity, when you look at this board and hearing the ideas, is there anything that's surprising or exciting to you about what you're seeing? And this is where I would love for you all to either unmute or use the Zoom chat.
Well, I could say something like, just after having our school sectors and the conversations with teachers and educators, I think there are a lot of opportunities. It's where does that happen, and making I guess administrators, especially if we're looking at the school sector, aware of what's available and how, how to access some of that information as well. I just think there's a lot of different things and a lot of places to get.
Yeah. And I know, Carly, you were talking about this. Do you have representation from school sector as part of this group and this work to tap into? Is that you, Carla? I see BVSD's, the Blue Valley School District. That's you?
Yes, I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
Oh, I was just curious. Robin commented on the strength of really being able to lean into all of the different points within the school sector. And I was wondering, so who is that person? Who are those people within the school sector to that can utilize to springboard this work forward?
It would have to start obviously at the district office,
Mm-hmm.
The exec board, the cabinet, and then trickles down.
Yeah. What other themes are you all seeing, or what else is standing out to you as you look at the ideas on the board?
I love the community engagement. I can't see very well, working with existing community groups, coalitions, and residents. And then the adaptive and inclusive sports and rec.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Who shared the community engagement piece about working with existing community groups, coalitions, and residents? I'm curious if you had anything specific in mind, or because you recognize that as a strength to leverage. So what are those leverage points within the community engagement piece?
Yeah, so that was mine. My name is Blake. I'm with the Unified Government Public Health Department. And this is pretty much what I already do, is a lot of community engagement and working with interested organizations and also residents to help kind of identify and prioritize like infrastructure projects, also like keeping track of like what is currently happening at the government level, like with Public Works and with our urban planning department, like what projects are happening and how could we incorporate access to physical activity opportunities with those projects that are already happening. And so that's kind of like what I currently do in my role at the health department. And so that's just what I was thinking as far as like physical activity access, like people actually being able to get to places where they can be physically active, whether that's parks, and also they can get to places that they need for their everyday life, like grocery stores, and even to neighbors' homes, and be able to walk safely to and from school and all those things. So that's what I meant by that. But there's a lot of people that are interested in the community in that work. It's just bringing them together and kind of seeing what levers need to be pulled to make those changes happen.
Great, thanks, Blake. Okay, well, I would like to dig into a few more of these, and I'm recognizing the time. And the next piece that we're going to talk about, so I'm going to transition us to opportunities, and this is the one where we were hoping to really lean into, because the question is, when you think about access to physical activity, what cross-sector opportunities for collaboration are there? And it sounds like we had already started to touch on those in the strengths, but the goal here would be to really lean in and be a little bit more specific. And this is where this starts to give some of that tangible information for the implementation side of the work you all are coming into doing. So with that in mind, again, I want to pause and give you some time to really brainstorm and think about where are those cross-sector opportunities, and think specifically again, is it specific organizations as opposed to general public health? Is it Blake with the public health department, or what exactly are those cross-sector opportunities that are going to support moving and advancing the needle on this work? So 60 seconds to again think individually before we start sharing on the Jamboard. Okay, that was 1 minute, and I'm telling you, I know I'm not doing the brainstorming, so on my end, it feels like a treadmill minute. Feels like it's been 5 minutes when it's only been a short one. But now if you go to the top of your page, again, on the Jamboard and go over to page 3, that's where the opportunities are, and I see that there already are a couple of sticky notes there. So everybody else, please share your sticky notes. Melissa, if you want to put some things in the Zoom chat, I will get them transferred over to the Jamboard. And let's just see kind of what gets thrown up. So far I'm seeing that the opportunities for cross-sector collaboration are with Parks and Rec, Children's Mercy, KU Med, HCA, improved connections with childcare, schools, and Parks and Rec, Pro Sports Foundations, Parks and Rec, adult and youth programming. So Parks and Rec is pretty popular. Okay, Melissa said the whole person. Can somebody tell me what is the whole person?
I work for the whole person. We offer disability services, like a complete array of them, but I work with adaptive sports specifically. So we have wheelchair tennis, power chair soccer, and then we partner with organizations all over town to help create inclusive sports. So we just partnered with ROKC to have an adaptive rock climbing night, with Parks and Recreation to have adaptive archery, things like that.
Yeah, thank you. That sounds like a really great organization. All right, I'm still seeing some ideas come up. So support for comprehensive city planning to increase access to physical activities across all sectors, Girls on the Run, Bike Walk KC, property developers, improved connections with childcare, schools, Parks and Rec. I think I read that one already, sorry. KC Healthy Kids, Eco Devo commissions. KC Zoo question mark. So maybe there's some room with the Kansas City Zoo. And the city planners. Joint efforts around public policy advocacy. Yeah. So as you are looking at these ideas, are any of these sticky notes, are you all clear on what that cross-sector collaboration would look like, what those opportunities are, or which ones would be helpful to get some clarification from other members of this group on? So maybe you all speak the same language, but I would be curious to know, when you think about city planners, I think there is an obvious high level connection, but when you think about access, what's that cross-sector ask of city planners in the work?
I would say that ask is to actually consider people being able to walk around whatever they're planning, and providing infrastructure for that. So providing opportunities for sidewalks, for like public spaces. Maybe that also includes benches for everyone in our community, because I think stuff like that gets looked over when that's not brought to the front of mind.
And I might add to that, if I could, to safely utilize those services or those sidewalks and parks and trails. Safety is a concern.
Yeah.
So like around UMKC and Rockhurst, they have the emergency phones and safe spots. So something similar to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes when you work with city planners, they see a flawless plan because it is engineered and designed in a clean way. And as Blake mentioned, some of those key pieces that make things that truly elevate to access, such as, is there appropriate lighting? Are there marked crosswalks? Are there, what are the things? Are there signage to help people know what kind of space it is, where it might connect, depending on where you're at? Sometimes those things can get overlooked. Is there anything missing from this board? I know I asked you to brainstorm and only share your top ideas, but is there anything that you feel like, so if you think about, we're increasing access to physical activity, if we, I think Parks and Rec is standing out to me. So if you work with Parks and Rec and a few of these key organizations, is that going to move the needle on access, or are there things that are missing from this list? Elected officials, yeah. Especially if you're working with departments that need approval from city or county elected officials. Advertising. Melissa put that in the chat. I'll add that as a sticky note here. Melissa, say more about how advertising would support this work.
For example, even if we are working with Parks and Recreation, so we had a partnership, we advertise through our clients and our social media, and they do as well, but that's still only being able to reach that client base. I'm just not sure how to get more public knowledge of opportunities that are going on around town. So, if people don't know about it, they can't join it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anybody here from, I think there's a media sector. Is that where the advertising would kind of fall under? Is there anybody here that represents that media sector, or is that you, Melissa?
Nope, not me.
No. Let's see. I know there's a couple of you, Veronica, Seth, Whitney, you marked yourselves as all sectors. So when you think about the sectors that are represented, especially media, where are those opportunities?
So I would say just connecting with our local agencies to promote a mass media campaign of sorts, in whatever capacity that is. But in connecting with local government, connecting with these different agencies, kind of having a consistent messaging and bringing everybody in to kind of help promote that.
Yeah, thank you. I just saw BBBS pop up. What is BBBS? Nope. Okay.
Sorry, I'm having a sneeze and allergy attack.
Oh no.
Big brothers and big sisters. Oh, good.
Okay. Yeah, so Big Brother, Big Sister may be an opportunity. When you think about the folks that are represented in this group, so the folks that showed up to today's summit meeting to do this planning, are there cross-sector opportunities within the sectors for the Kansas City physical activity plan effort that need to be focused on?
Well, in our schools, we talked about, often things are sent to schools to share with families, especially that are targeting school age. But then do we know it gets home to them? Do we know it gets read? There's a lot of those things. So I do think that's still an avenue for sure, like for, some of the Parks and Rec programming, the Bike Walk KC, Girls on the Run actually happens at schools. They go there to do that. So I think there's a great opportunity to work with schools to help share what's happening. And the perfect thing about our Parks and Recs department is there's different Parks and Recs departments that cover the different counties, and they can have very focused things. I just think we kind of talked about just the bottom line of, is the information getting sent home? Is it getting read too? I mean, because that's the other piece of it. Is there another way to share it that's easily, like we were talking, electronically, that paper doesn't always come home in the backpacks anymore. Maybe they're getting email newsletters. So just how that's shared and what would they need to be able to, try to share more or make sure that it gets used too with that too. I don't know. I also think then there's definitely always that we talked about that the same message needs to be coming across. So in the school, is it, if there's something happening at parks, if they're going to their doctor's offices in the whole, is it kind of the same messaging? And I don't know if there's a way to, I know people don't go to their doctor every week, so it's not like they're going to hear about this next thing, but yeah.
But when you think about the different places and spaces that people might be getting information about access opportunities and what's available to them, is it consistent? Are they seeing some of the same messaging that will reinforce, hopefully getting them involved or engaged in whatever might be available, or just knowing that it's there? Yeah. Okay, we have 1 minute left for break. So are there any thoughts that have not been shared, even if it doesn't tie to one of the questions, that you all would like to make sure that we get captured before we go to break? Because we'll move on to challenges when we come back from break. Well, I do want to invite that if you have any thoughts that you feel like, oh man, I missed the meeting, I missed it by 2 minutes and I didn't get that on there. This Jamboard, you can go back and add your ideas, which will be available for you to add the rest of our time today. So if you have one of those lingering thoughts, I'm always that person. Please go back and add it in on a sticky note on the appropriate page. But we will move to challenges when we come back from break. So I think they're going to kick us out of this room now, right? So I'm looking at Veronica and Litany. Okay.
Hello, everybody. I think we've all arrived back from our breakout rooms. So now we're going to begin a 10-minute break. And the first 5 minutes, we've got a physical activity break that we'll share. And then the second 5 minutes will be just a personal relief break, time to get a drink, go to the bathroom, things like that. Feel free to leave your camera on or off during the physical activity break, but we do really want to model good behavior. And so please get up, move around, stretch yourselves out. I promise you're going to feel better.
My name is Bryce from the Center for Children's Healthy Lifestyles and Nutrition at Children's Mercy, Kansas City, where we work to promote children's healthy lifestyles and physical activity in the Kansas City region. Today we're going to do some exercises and some stretches for you guys. Most of these can be done while you're sitting or while you're standing. So let's get right into it. The first one we're going to do, we're going to lock our fingers and we're going to stretch all the way up to the ceiling. Try to touch the stars. Get on your tiptoes a little bit, and then we're gonna bring our arms down, right behind our neck. Bring our elbows in, and let's rock back and forth. Right, left, right, left. Good job. All right, back up to the starting position, and now let's get some head circles in. You might hear some cracks, that's okay. Good, and now let's get our whole body involved and let's shake things out a little bit. Get ready for some of these main stretches. Awesome. Let's bring our arms up and we're gonna do some core twists. We wanna get a little bit of a wider stance. We're gonna go left, right. Nice, rock solid. Perfect. All right, and all this can be done in a seated position as well. It would be this type of variation. And we're gonna move on to the next drill. So we're gonna do some knee pulls. We'll start with our right. You wanna grab right below the knee, pull up towards our chest, hold it for about 5 seconds. It's okay if you lose your balance, find something next to you, find a table or a chair. You can hold your balance just like that. If you're seated, you can do this variation. Back to our right leg. Good job. All right, and then we're gonna transition to some toe touches. Touch our right toe. Try to hold that for about 5 seconds. If you can't touch your toe, that's totally fine. Just touch somewhere in your shin. See how far you can get down. 3, 2, 1. Awesome. If we're standing, it's gonna look like this. See how far you can get down that shin. Try to touch your toes. Awesome. Nice and controlled. We can focus on our breathing in through our nose, out through our mouth. All right, we'll do a quick hamstring stretch now. Our right leg, we're gonna reach down, grab that foot, pull up towards our butt. Good, hold for about 5 seconds. Awesome, left side. 2, 1, good job. If you're in the seated position, it looks about like this. Get a good stretch in. If you're not able to grab your foot, that's okay. The variation would just be leaning back and trying to reach down with your hand as far as you can. Good. All right, on to the next one. We're gonna get a glute stretch in now. When we're sitting all day at home, this is a good stretch to make sure that things are activated. Our big muscles in our body are activated while we're sitting down. So we're gonna bring our right leg up, sit our ankle on our leg. You can lean forward for a better stretch, hold it, and then we can lift up on that leg just slightly. Good, we'll go to the other leg. If you're standing up, it looks something like this. Good, lift it up a little. Okay, and our last one, let's connect our fingers again. Let's reach to the stars. And let's slowly flow down into a forward fold. Grab those elbows. You can sway to the left, and the right, left, right, sitting down, looks like this. Left, right, and good. There we go, guys. Thanks for joining me. These are all exercises you can do at home. And as we're sitting at home, if you're working from home or in a seated position throughout the day, these are fantastic ways to get moving in an easily accessible way. Thanks.
All right. Hopefully that loosened you all up. We'll meet back here at 11 o'clock to start the breakout session number 2. All right, everybody, we're going to head back into the breakout rooms again. And hope you're having a good discussion. Just a reminder to the weighing in support and the facilitators, let's make sure that the breakout sessions are being recorded as well. The recording in the main room doesn't carry over to the breakout room. So just make sure we do that. And Tico, you can send people to breakout rooms whenever you have a chance.
All right. Welcome back. Hopefully everybody had a chance to enjoy that stretch, maybe get a snack, more caffeine if you need it. Tina commented earlier from our team that it was early, and I realized how different we are. I'm the kind of person that 8:15 feels late, and for her, it still feels early. So if you need that extra caffeine boost, I hope you were able to get it during the break. Okay, well, I reshared the Jamboard link just in case you closed out of it. But we are going to be diving back in to the conversation about access to physical activity. And we're transitioning to thinking about challenges, what might get in the way and what you might be prepared to overcome. And then we're going to end the session with thinking about the top 3 priorities. So we can do we'll do a recap of what we've shared so far, and then end on your top 3 priorities. When you think about moving forward, what would that be related to access? So that's where we're going with the rest of the time. And again, this time we have a little bit more slow pace, and we'll wrap up at 11:40 to go back to the main room. So that being said, I am going to share my screen again, just to make sure that Melissa can see what's happening. Okay. Melissa, are you able to see the Jamboard?
Yep, you're good.
Awesome. Okay, so quick recap. We quickly, in a sprint, worked through thinking about strengths and opportunities for cross-sector collaboration as it relates to physical activity. Some of the things that stood out from strengths were just that there were a couple of strong Blue Valley specifically, but school partnerships. There seemed to be a lot of strengths around existing organizations and some current practices in providing that access to physical activity as it exists. And some of those, like I said, kind of connections to that philanthropic minded coaches and instructors. So there are a lot of individuals and organizations that are leaning into this work to increase physical activity access that already exist. But there are a lot of opportunities to strengthen that and make access even more, I was going to say accessible, but that's silly, but even strengthen access even more for physical activity. And the list of partners and opportunities there is huge. So Parks and Rec was really common, but there were also a lot of kind of one-off organizations like the Whole Person, Girls on the Run, or clubs or organizations, Girls on the Run, Big Brother, Big Sister, maybe the zoo. And then there was also this recognition that elected officials, EcoDevo, some of those more governmental entities likely have a big role in increasing and assuring access to all individuals for physical activity. Before we move into challenges, is there any reflections that anybody just wants to highlight from the first 2 sections that is standing out to you all? All right, well, let's move on. And I do see, I think, Kyle, are you new to this room? I don't think I saw you last time.
No, I was in the first one too.
Oh,
Sorry,
sorry.
I haven't had I'm recovering. I had my COVID shot yesterday, so I'm
Oh,
kind of under the weather. So that's why my camera's not on.
no worries. Well, thank you for being here anyway. We appreciate you being in this space. I realized I didn't have my my Zoom screen with all the boxes pulled down far enough, so you were probably just on my other page last time. All right. So as I mentioned, the next one, so again, if you go to the top arrow and move to page 4 of 7, the next page is on challenges. So when you think about access to physical activity, what challenges, and making progress on that, what challenges do you think you all might be prepared to overcome? So what might get in the way of you all moving on some of those cross-sector opportunities and increasing access? And this time, let's just go ahead and you can pause and wait till you gather your thoughts, or if you're somebody who wants to put them on your sticky notes and on the board as they come to you, feel free to do that. I won't set a timer for you to take notes on your own. So we'll give a few minutes here for folks to get their ideas on the Jamboard or in the chat, and I will transfer them over. Okay. Melissa, I see you said transportation. I've got that up. Funding and staff capacity, socioeconomic disparities, prioritizing certain areas for improvements in walkability, safety, access to transportation. Oh, safety for childcare providers. So really specific, that's great. I think that the more specific that you are at times, the easier it is to take that information and move forward with what are we going to do about this and how does that inform our next step. Some pieces are across the board, like awareness and accessibility in general. But if you were thinking about a specific space or place or impacted population, definitely name that in your sticky note as well. I know that I heard in the main group, equity was a focus. So when you're thinking about equitable access and what does that mean, that might add a couple of different sticky notes for you. Cost. Moving from training to implementation and change in behaviors. I'm going to give you guys another minute or so to get some ideas up on the board. Tracking impact. Okay, I'm seeing the sticky notes slow down. Limiting screen time. Yeah, so say more about limiting screen time and how that might get in the way of you all's work on the access to physical activity. How does that impact the work you are doing?
Well, from the early childhood sector, we're working with, although licensing requirements for childcare programs limit that. We know we have a lot of unregulated childcare providers we work with and family home providers and kith and kin care. And so getting those messages across and helping them to see the value of physical activity versus screen time for little kids is important.
Yeah, okay, so you're thinking specifically to limiting screen time within those childcare settings. So the barriers could be things that there's no supporting policies, the education about increasing physical activity, decreasing screen time, things like that. Is that fair with what I'm hearing, Kyle?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, let's clarify a few more of these because I think they're broad, and that to me that specificity is helpful in the context of what are we going to need to work to overcome so that we can make real progress on the access piece. Somebody just put costs. Say more about costs and what that means, because I could probably make up 2 or 3 different ideas about what costs are getting in the way.
That was mine as well. I was thinking from the perspective of some of our low income providers and families, and I guess helping them to recognize that, these sports leagues that can be costly, there are other options for that for children in the community, or ways to help them with that. And then just broadly for physical activity, playgrounds and playground equipment for childcare programs, that's very costly as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the types of activity and access are related to things that cost dollars, whether it is a group programming, like a sports programs, or childcare centers having access to playground equipment, or even on their property. There are costs that could get in the way of them providing those types of things, or from families being able to engage in some more structured physical activity opportunities.
I'll kind of chime in. I think based on everything that's been put up on the board for this session, and especially just some recent work that I've done, like there's a lot of need to help like reinforce or even create a new culture of like being active, whether that's just getting out and walking in your neighborhood. And I do appreciate the point of like the screen time. Like sometimes that is like emphasized, and maybe we do need to kind of change that culture around how we spend our time. And also the point about organized sports, I think sometimes people feel like they have to be part of an organized sport to go do something outside. And a lot of our parks, I mean, they are built that way. They have baseball fields or like disc golf courses and stuff like that. So you feel like you can't use that space for something just like normal and being out in nature. And so I think just kind of creating this like culture and helping people kind of realize there are things you can just do every day. But also like we've just built our cities in our communities in a way that make it really, frankly, like hostile to walk around, and especially to bike and stuff like that. So I think really working to change that culture is something that takes a lot of time, but I think all of these points kind of come back to helping address that kind of at a societal level, but also identifying like specific strategies like for childcare or for other things. And then also to the point of cost, I would just say, yeah, when I saw that one, I was just like, I mean, it costs obscene amounts of money to build short spans of sidewalks.
Right.
I mean, it costs like $500,000 for maybe 2 blocks of sidewalk. And then with that, you also have to think about like your storm sewer and your like sewage infrastructure. And there's a lot that goes into it. But I think like really creating that culture and getting community members engaged to talk with like elected officials to kind of help route some of our budget, like our resources and our dollars to that at a government level is very important. But that's just kind of how I see everything coming together. And yeah, safety and accessibility definitely need to be part of that process. It gets very overwhelming when you start like thinking about like how do we do this? But it is work that I think needs to be done, and it's happening very slowly. But yeah, that's all I have to say for now.
Well, and
I know. Oh,
I was
did
gonna say-
somebody else unmute?
sorry, to build on that like a little bit, when you think about costs too, and We talk about bikes and, for families to have a limited income and the cost of even purchasing, a bike or a football, just different things. And then I think then that brings in awareness of what opportunities are available for families that maybe need, or is there opportunities to get through some of the community partners access to some of those type of physical activity, I don't know, aids. So if you want to say that, like with bikes, or if it's balls or bats, or how for families to be aware of that too, because I was thinking awareness was something I put, but I always think there's a lot of challenges to awareness. It could be awareness for what's available in their community. It could be awareness for where do I go find a team to even get on my child on. I mean, there's a lot of depending on everything with that. I just think there was a lot with awareness too. And I think we talked about that earlier with the mass media and how do we get information and how do we share across the board too. But even I guess tracking impact could be for all of those, it'd be difficult, but aware of what is being used to track and who is tracking and what they're keeping. And is there a place, a repository, so to speak, if Parks and Recs keeps track of how many students or whoever participates in their programs. And I think we're talking younger, I'm thinking of younger people because I work in the school sector, but we also have older people too, are they aware of things in community centers and those things? So yeah. Anyway, and Blake, thanks for sharing about how much it costs for a sidewalk. Those are things that are very interesting that a lot of us don't really know. I had learned a little bit. I always wondered, why are they always fixing the roads right as school's getting started again? Well, it comes down to temperature, right? And all those things. I was educated by a friend of mine who works for the city and just kind of explained this is when and where. But those are things I think too, not everybody understands. And so then it seems like, well, that'd just be as easy. Let's just build more sidewalks, right? But what all does that take? So anyway.
Right. Yeah, so I feel like I'm hearing two key things come out of this conversation we're having right now. I'm hearing there's that, Robin, kind of to the point you were making about there are opportunities and resources that are more structured and programmed available to community members through different avenues. And there may be some ways to track that. And then kind of on a separate note, still both within the realm of increasing of access to physical activity. And Blake, what I heard you saying is the idea and the realization that you don't have to participate in a structured activity to be physically active. That some of that is cultural, that I don't know about you all, I know growing up, when I thought about being physically active, it was about playing t-ball or volleyball or whatever the thing was I was doing. Not the fact that, we lived on 80 acres and we had cattle farm, and part of that, like, I never thought about doing cattle chores as being physically active, but I was very physically active because I was out doing that work all day in the summer. And that was part of what I did. But in my brain, that mental shift, that cultural aspect of what counts, that you have to be working hard and sweating to be physically active. And so important. And I think those are two separate ideas, just to recognize as you all think about this work and talk about it, that there may be more than one avenue for what it looks like to create and reframe access to physical activity in the work that you're doing through this plan. Okay, I do want to give just one more minute about any other reflection thoughts when you look at the challenges listed on this screen, or would you like to ask any of the other participants for clarity about what did you mean when you added this sticky note?
I did just want to add to, somebody actually just added it, was the creating messages that resonate with specific groups. This is going to look different from community to community. Like even if you're working on parks, it's going to look different from park to park on what that looks like. And then the other point that I was going to say, I've spent the last couple of years just kind of immersed in like this infrastructure work. And it's really just the way that we design things really dictates how people use them. And so I think like that's just a very big piece that I wanted to mention too. I think there's ways that we can design like our roadways and streets and like our parks to get people to be more physically active and have people feel safer in their communities. And then another piece is also, I know at the health department right now, we're working on like some community connectedness kind of programming, kind of bringing communities together around parks to try to implement some longer term projects. Maybe they get some like exercise equipment installed in the park or something like that. But just to say that there's a lot of avenues to go down, but it is also important to highlight that it will be different for either different types of like social groups or communities, whether that be geographically or just like on a social level.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. All right. So we only have about 19 minutes left. And I want to give time so we have plenty of time to think about ideas and recommendations for the priorities and what's next when it comes to, again, making progress. We're never going to nail it because as we talked about, there's a big culture mindset in the work, but if we can move the needle and make some progress, that is what matters. So I want to make sure we have time to think about that. But first, I just want to pause and let you think about all of the ideas and that were shared and the possible opportunities for connection, the challenges. Unfortunately, I feel like the what could get in the way conversation always seems to have some of the most energy because, you know, this important and difficult work, there are a lot of things in our systems that like to keep the systems exactly where they're at. So this always seems to have a lot of energy around this level of conversation. But when you think about what was heard today in general, what's one thing that's sitting with you that you're going to leave this conversation with, remembering that comment or that sticky note? And if you would either unmute or just share in the Zoom chat, I just want to see some ideas from what's the thing that's standing out to you on the ideas shared today so far.
Well, one thing I've seen is, you know, this, you talked about kind of the two things that you were seeing, Jessica, as far as, you know, this culture versus, you know, the access. So like how easy it is for somebody to step outside and just go for a walk. I think it's super important to kind of look at the built environment and seeing how we can engage the community to help prioritize some of these areas that need these infrastructure changes. So yeah, the structured play versus, you know, like I just go outside and play with my friends and the city is my oyster. Like, I think that's that really hit home for me.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Veronica. I know there's some voices here that we haven't heard from today. And I don't know if you have not been in a place to participate, but if you are able to unmute, would love to hear a couple of thoughts from you all as well.
If I can, my name is Martin Cunningham. I'm also in the health department with Blake. And my perspective is from the fundraising aspect of it. And what Blake was mentioning about the culture within the county, if you will, within our region is absolutely spot on. And my viewpoint is that we almost have to start at the top. We have all these great ideas that boil from underneath, but the only way they're actually going to happen is if we get buy-in from the commission. We have something that we can present to them directly, and we have 4 or 5 of those members who say, yes, absolutely. Like, for example, that 1/4 mil levy that went over to Parks and Rec. That was by virtue of a couple of people on the commission who felt very strongly about that, and now they do have some money. And I think all these ideas that we have, the challenges that are presented, can be overcome if we have buy-in by our representatives. And that's something we really have to focus on. That's all.
No, thanks, Martin. I think that's a great reflection on the impact that, yeah, your elected officials will have in making progress in some of this work, and especially again when it comes to a lot of the built environment stuff. And I know somebody earlier mentioned developers as well, but city and county policy can impact some development work as well. We have probably time to hear from one more person on a reflection before we move to giving you time to think about the priorities. Okay, no takers. That's all right. So the final piece of the Jamboard, so page 5 out of 7, I think I just have a couple of blank pages on the back. So the final one is page 5. And what I would like each of you to do is, so all on one sticky note, and you can spend a couple of minutes brainstorming, but given what we've talked about today, and knowing that the goal is to increase access to physical activity, if you had to recommend moving forward, what are those top 3 opportunities in which you should focus your energy and time, your resources? What might those be? And that might include some of those cross-sector partners that were listed, overcoming some of the possible barriers. Use that information to inform, and the strengths, use that information to inform, like, what would we focus our time, energy, and efforts on? So again, put your top 3 all on one sticky note, and then we will reflect as a team and see if there are any similarities. And I'm going to save 2 minutes at the end to get a volunteer to share out to the main group when we're done. So again, think about those top 3 priorities, and when you're ready, start sharing them on the Jamboard. I'm not seeing any pop up yet, and I don't know if you all are in deep thought, or would it be helpful to unmute and think out loud with some of your group members here? So let's see. So partner with high visibility organizations, develop safe areas, facilities to be utilized. Number 3, question mark. That's okay. If you don't have a number 3, that is not a word.
I got stuck.
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough question, right? When you're thinking about access, there are probably about a million different directions you could go to increase access. You look at your cross-sector collaboration slide on the Jamboard, and that's 20 different ideas right there. So
Well,
it's a
I
tough
was
one.
thinking with the high visibility partner who also has deep pockets, that would also increase or help with communication, just even thinking, not necessarily just our sporting teams, but, T-Mobile or Burns and Mac, or just people who have access to a large audience.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, that's certainly a possible priority opportunity, is to really lean into and leverage those partnerships that are available, Carla. Okay, so some others that are popping up are education on physical activities available, the training on best practices around physical activity for young children, connections to organizations and Parks and Rec to promote physical activity, mobilizing and raising up the community voice, encouraging a culture of walking, biking, rolling, and using public transit, and engaging with elected officials. Improve safety and connectivity of spaces where people live, engage residents of communities to identify barriers to active transportation in certain areas, and engage representatives to hear this feedback. So I'm seeing a couple about engaging community members and mobilizing, raising up community voice. So definitely seeing some specific community engagement. I'm curious, when you say community, are there specific target communities you would envision engaging, historically marginalized, specific areas of the Kansas City area, neighborhood zip codes? How do you decide which communities to engage with?
I wrote the mobilizing and raising up the community voice. I think there's a couple different categories. I think there are communities that are already very active and know what they want and are pretty savvy as far as getting in front of elected officials and things. And that's kind of what I would call like low-hanging fruit to help support them and help raise them up and maybe help them like get a plan together. The other category would be kind of, as you mentioned, about like a historically disinvested neighborhood. I know in Wyandotte County with our infrastructure action team that works on these types of issues, there was a lot of discussion like how do we exactly define that, and is that equitable too? And so that is a big struggle. We definitely do have like our targeted communities based on, or not targeted, but prioritized communities based on data and information that we know, like chronic disease rates, and maybe even like fetal and infant mortality data and other health outcome data, or like if they're a food desert. So we do have those types of communities, but they're probably not as mobilized. And that can just take a lot of time. To kind of help bring those communities together and figure out how best to work with them and figure out what exactly they want. So it's a little bit of both of those two strategies, of that low-hanging fruit and then also engaging maybe those historically ignored type of geographic areas.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification, Blake. I just want to point out a couple more ideas that have popped up are developing programs, areas, facilities to be utilized when outdoor physical activity isn't an option. Thank you, Kansas winter and weather, and Missouri winter and wind and weather. Transportation, are there any free public transportation resources for those in the community that cannot use services such as Lyft, Uber, or even their own vehicle? Johnson County is a pretty big county filled with highways. Yeah, and I think that goes back to something we were discussing earlier about the way our communities and cities have been built. They have been built for cars. They were built so that people could drive places, not so that people could move their bodies places. They are built for cars. So great ideas. What other themes? I pointed out one theme I was seeing across a couple of sticky notes. What are you all seeing, if anything, that might have a connection between some of these ideas?
I see safety is a big piece of this. And I think kind of circling back to the culture piece, I think that there is definitely a perceived safety that people have when they're in spaces. And then there's like your actual safety, how safe you actually are in a space, or if something bad has happened in a certain area. I kind of see developing those safe spaces and then designing spaces, or even if you're using public transit, like how can we make people feel safer or more secure while using those types of services? Because there is a certain type of stigma that goes with like public transit, and I think that's a big driver of why some people don't use it. But also, like, our transit system doesn't like serve what you need. Like, it only comes once an hour, maybe for a few hours of the day, and it'll probably take you literally 24 hours to get somewhere, depending on where you're going using just public transit. So
yeah,
but I think safety and creating kind of like, or maybe it's also like education too, and education just generally about pedestrian safety. And if you're like riding a bike, like what are the hand signals? Like how can you tell other traffic like how you're going to move, or like crossing the street, and just like general pedestrian safety education. So it would be a big thing.
yeah. So there might be multiple components to safety. Yeah. Okay. I am recognizing the time, and I would like to know who is willing from this group to share out with the big group. It sounds like it's just kind of a couple of reflections or key takeaways. I'd be happy to share a screen if you'd like me to, or you're welcome to just share those few high level pieces.
I nominate Blake.
Don't you love it when you get volunteered, Blake?
I saw that one coming. No, it's fine. I'm completely fine with sharing with the group. That's not a problem at all.
All right, thank you so much. And to a quick story, Blake, when you started talking about perceived safety, I used to work at the Riley County Health Department and was doing work with active transportation, safe routes to school. And a survey we did showed that some high 80% of parents said they wouldn't let their kids walk to school because they were genuinely fearful that their child would get kidnapped. And it didn't matter that there hadn't been a kidnapping, and that wasn't a statistic, that even, it was just that perceived safety issue. And so they said, you can build the crosswalks, but I'm still not going to let my kid walk to school. That was my first kind of kick in the pants with, just because you build it doesn't mean they will come. There's more to it. There's that perception, some cultural.
Man, we were having a really good discussion. Then we got kicked back here. What?
I know Donald had the best comment of the whole day, and then
He
it was
did.
right in between. Yeah. But solving all,
Yeah, you know, that's how it works. Like I had the most enlightening thing going, and then, you know, whatever.
well, let's see, I'm looking. looks like everybody's back into the room now. So what we're going to do is do a share back to the entire group from each of the individual breakout sessions. So each group gets 2 minutes to share what you discussed. I know that is not nearly enough time, but that's all that we've got time today. There will be additional notes and reports coming out of this that'll be more encompassing, but this will just be kind of a little taste of what happened in the breakout rooms. So we'll start with access room number 1. And I think Jessica was the facilitator there. I don't know who's going to be speaking, but feel free to unmute yourself. And Jessica, if you're sharing a Jamboard or your screen, you can go ahead and do that now too.
Blake is sharing for our group. Blake, would you like me to share any particular screen on the Jamboard, or would you like to just share?
I think I can just share.
Okay.
So hello, everyone. My name's Blake. I'm with the Unified Government Public Health Department. So we talked about access to physical activity opportunities in our community. We had a pretty good group of people. We talked a lot about schools and also like early childhood development. We talked a little bit about engaging with our elected officials and just engaging the community to bring some of those safety concerns forward. At the end of our discussion, we did end up talking a lot about or a bit about safety and perceived safety and actual safety, and really also talked about just creating a culture of physical activity. So we talked a little bit about how like our parks are built. Maybe there is like a baseball diamond or something like that, and you feel like you have to play baseball in order to be in that space. So really talking about how could we talk to our residents and talk to families about you can be physically active in many other ways just out in your community, and just understanding that that will require some time in building trust and again building kind of that culture of it's okay to be outside and maybe just ride your bike or walk around your neighborhood and do stuff like that. We also those were the main things that we talked about, and we did talk a lot about local government. I think we had quite a few people in our group that was involved with that, and really just overall education and engaging with all groups of people, and just yeah, those were our main points.
Great, thanks for that. Thanks for that summary, and it's interesting, and I think probably everyone is hopefully you're having the same experience I have, is that we were talking about policy, but some of those same issues came up in our group around community or communication and partnerships. And so as we're hearing these updates, let's kind of think back to some common themes around them all. Access to physical activity was by far the #1 interest area as people registered. So we actually had 2 access to physical activity groups. So the second group was led by or was facilitated by Zane. And I don't know who's speaking from that group.
I'm going to share my screen and invite Jody. Yeah, Jody.
Okay. Yeah. So we had a good amount of people from different from different sectors talking, and we definitely have some good collaborative work that we can move ahead with. We were talking about with Kansas City, we have a lot of opportunities because we do have some beautiful parks. We have some good bike lanes. We have a lot of sports teams in Kansas City and a lot of different activities that kids can get involved in. But we kind of had the same discussion, and we ended kind of in the same area with communication. Communication is hard to try to figure out what is accessible, what we have available, how our patients and family and friends can access these resources. So we kind of lumped our priorities into 2 different categories that can kind of be connected as one. So one of the priorities was creating the map of physical activity locations, gathering and distributing of program and resource information. So really this like side over here on the right, we really need to create our list, try to find our resources, talk with community health members and all the different wonderful organizations that you guys are involved in, and find that list, create maybe a central hub for that list where you can access it either in like a park facility or an online app or website, and then also how to communicate that out. So our other side of the priorities was communication. So talking with our leaders, getting feedback from Kansas City members as well to try to figure out how we can engage Kansas City into this priority as well, and then connecting the two. So how do we connect both of these to get the word out there?
Great. Awesome. Thanks. Thanks, Jody, for that update. Let's see, policy was next. So Julianne was the facilitator and Allison is going to give us a summary.
Yes. Thank you, Allison. Would you like me to share the screen or are you good to go?
Share it. Share
All
on. The sticky
right,
notes are
I will
beautiful.
share it.
A lot of good work into those.
Okay.
So crazy, Jody, you mentioned all that because we talked a lot about that. Just the Wellness Hub didn't come up. So messaging and communication, getting the word out there, and then also duplicate groups. We also talked about missing the people who need to be at the table to make those changes and just understanding what they actually want. We also talked about trying to get some of those city officials out there to also help us out in the decision makers and convincing them. We also talked about how different languages, back to communication, maybe some of the city officials are not speaking the same language as the community members that are actually requesting. And so they're misunderstanding what's happening. And then also not being aware of those resources. That was one of the other big things that goes back to communication is who in your agency is going to these meetings to learn about all these offerings, and then what are they doing with that information? Are they taking it back to their work group and sharing those resources with people who can actually utilize those and take action? Staffing and funding, and people actually being able to make the adequate time to follow through on some of these actions as well too. But a lot of it came to communication, messaging, and understanding. And then we also had one on, let's see if I can go find it. Policy. Policy is hard, guys. A lot of us are not policymakers. And so then when those do come out, all the legal jargon and all that, like might be missing the mark on some of that. And then we're also having struggles with restrictions to those policies and getting those city officials to get to the table to understand why some of those policies need to change. So that way we can provide access for all. Did I miss anything? Anyone else in our group? Donald,
you may have mentioned it, Allison, but emphasis on, a coordinating entity for all of these things, that crosses state lines, crosses county lines, et cetera. Thank you.
Yep. Donald, you had a really good one at the very end.
You mean okay, so
yes.
So I was just saying, I think Allison brought up a point about having, one group is doing one project, another group is doing another project. We don't want to double dip. So it'd be great if there was a huge text group where we had all of our different partners on this text group. So when one sent out text, hey, I'm doing this project, someone else could be like, hey, I'm interested in that. I don't want to do it again. I'm hopping on, or something like that. That'd be awesome. I think that'd be awesome for all of us.
Yes, just sharing the wheels that you work so hard to create. So that way someone else can also duplicate that wheel and offer it in their area as well, in their community. So thank you, Donald.
Great. Next up, physical activity programming. That was Tina's group, or Tina facilitated.
I did. And I think, is it Chelsea? Are you sharing for us? And do you want to see the screen as well?
Yeah, you can show the priorities.
Okay, great.
So like all the other groups, we had a lot of the same conversations, even though we were programming, partnerships are key. In order to successfully do programming, we need to have the partners that are focusing solely on physical activity, the partners that are focusing on other health aspects, but, fitting physical activity into their work plans and the priorities. is really key. And there's some great partnerships already. There's some great facilities with Parks and Recs. And obviously this physical activity summit has brought a lot of those people to the table, which is always a positive thing, and kind of breaking down those barriers for communication, which was another priority, is the communication piece. There's tons of great programming going on in the community, but sometimes the communication isn't widely distributed to everybody. There's a lot of different priorities in programming. So sometimes all that communication, if it's not your focus, it's lost. But finding the new and unique ways to get that communication out. We talked about newsletters and social media, and just the non-traditional ways as well. Another priority is, when you're talking about programming, is to meet people where they're at. It's great to have people come to a rec center, but if that rec center isn't accessible, or that park isn't accessible for everyone, then sometimes that programming will fail. So really making sure that we're meeting people where they're at, and to engaging the other businesses or organizations in that community. We talked about, a grocery store that's a popular place, maybe a great partner to have, even though it's not physical activity, they can promote it. We can hold something at their grocery store that would promote physical activity. So all of those things, just inviting and inclusive, and meeting different languages. We talked a lot about signage, and how having different signages within parks or community facilities would be great. QR codes that take you to a different website, or having signage in different language just makes programming accessible to all different types of audiences. And then beneficial, right? So meeting parents and kids all together, all different ages. And, I think that's about the key things. And really, the last piece would be the innovative programming. Thinking outside the traditional activity, walking, gym, really trying to come up with some innovative, engaging programming. COVID obviously has allowed people to become very comfortable with the online world and doing things virtually. So how can we kind of still capitalize on reaching audiences using that method, as well as having, those central locations and parks and things that we can reach people at. So I think that's about it. And obviously there were several other conversations, but those were the key things we talked about for priorities for programming.
Great, thanks Chelsea for that update. And last group to share is professional development education. Sai was the facilitator there.
Yeah, and I think James was going to share for our group. James, would you like me to share my screen, or are you comfortable where you're at?
Yeah, if you want to share that kind of last slide, I think we can go over it from there. Yeah, so my name is Jay Robertson. I'm one of the sports medicine docs at Children's Mercy, and we're basically talking about different ways to educate amongst our groups, and even down to families and kids. And what we kind of decided was that there's got to be some collaboration amongst the different sectors to really find out, make sure we're really educating the right people, the people who want the education, and making sure that we're tailoring the education to whatever group we're talking to. And as I've seen, communication and different language kind of becomes a theme in different ways, I think, for all of our groups. But one of the things that we're really talking about is making sure that we aren't using jargon when we're talking to people, making sure we're using basic language that can educate everybody without people being confused or unsure of what acronym we're using and things like that. And that's something that needs to happen regardless of what group is being educated. But I think we've got within our whole KCPA plan a lot of highly educated and engaged folks who would be great resources to provide education. So I think that's where we've got some really good strengths in this group, and just making sure that when we do those implementation things that we do bring in the different sectors. Also, a big part of education is making sure people can actually get to it. So making sure that we give plenty of different opportunities, whether it be in person or online or on demand, kind of education that we can get everybody involved with. And obviously different parts of our states and different parts of the region have different access to those things. So we really want to make it accessible to all. Was a really big point that we wanted to make. And then another thing that we really wanted to make sure is that we could engage leaders in the organization. So in a business or in a school district or anything like that, to actually give people the time to do this and talk about costs and how to mitigate that for the individuals and maybe get it onto the group. So that's most of what we were talking about.
Great, thanks, Jay. Thanks to all the groups for great summaries. Thanks to all the individuals for participating in the conversation. Obviously, that was just a snippet of what happened in all the breakout rooms. So we'll spend the coming days, weeks, and even months, really kind of better understanding what some of the themes and takeaways were from all of these breakout sessions. And that actually leads us to the end of the program and the next steps. Pull up my slide here. Sorry. So we've been recording all these sessions. We've been taking excellent notes. Of course, we have all the Jamboards from the individual presentations, and we're going to distribute all that information back to you, like I mentioned. We'll do that in several ways. One way is we do have a Kansas City Physical Activity Plan YouTube channel, and Katie might be throwing that in the chat if she hasn't already. This is where we have recordings of all those special events that we held in August and September, in addition to where we'll post some of the discussions that we had today. We also really try to prioritize communication through sectors that you've signed up for. So there are monthly sector newsletters that provide really good summaries of the things that we've talked about. And I'll show you in just a second on how to sign up for those sector updates and that communication in just a minute. And that brings me to, we hope that you join a sector working group. This is where the action of the Kansas City Physical Activity Plan really takes place, is at the sector level. And so the easiest way to be involved and to help with collaborative action across the plan is by getting involved in your sector work group. We'll show you on the next slide how to do that, but I strongly encourage you to sign up for one of those groups so you get those communications. Additionally, if you don't want to join the Kansas City Physical Activity Plan, if you don't want to join a sector work group, that's fine. This plan is a free plan. It's a publicly available plan. We would be ecstatic if we learned that some organization or some group all of a sudden went ahead and implemented strategies 24, 25, and 26 because they were part of some other working group from some other organization and were able to do it. That is what we want to do. Because if we get enough people implementing the plan, we feel we can make long-term changes in opportunities for physical activity in our region. So here are the upcoming sector work group meetings. So early childhood, healthcare, parks and recreation, sport, mass media and schools all have dates set. We have a couple other sectors that currently don't have meetings set, but will. But again, if you sign up for sectors, you'll get notified of when those future meetings happen. And again, Katie, I think, has put in the chat how you can sign up for those groups. And actually it's on the screen right there too, kcphysicalactivityplan.org/sector work groups. And with that, that concludes the 2022 Kansas City Physical Activity Summit. We're only 1 minute over. Thank you all for all of your work today. Thanks for joining the conversation, contributing to the conversation. We really appreciate it. And most of all, thank you for all you do for health in our region. And with that, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and that we see you in a future sector work group meeting. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day. Oh, sorry, last one. I screwed up. Eval. This is the last slide. So we'll leave with this slide up. Please contribute. We do take your evaluations to heart. So please, if you have comments, not only about today's summit, but also the work in general, feel free to fill out this evaluation. And we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.